Welcome to the 260 Journey and welcome to Acts 26. The Apostle Paul is about to make his defense before King Agrippa before leaving for Rome. It is so powerful that at the end of his speech, the king says to Paul, "In a short time, you will persuade me to become a Christian." What was so powerful about this speech that Paul made? He told his conversion experience for the third time in Acts. Always remember, just because something is old to you, it may be new for someone else. D.L. Moody was the greatest American evangelist in the 19th century. He was never afraid to tell people about Jesus wherever he was, and he had a reputation for doing that. In fact, one of my favorite stories is one time D.L. Moody's in an elevator, and Moody asked a woman if she was going to heaven. Her reply was, "Sir, you are either the rudest man I ever met or you are D.L. Moody." Moody was an amazing storyteller to make the gospel more understandable when he preached. I remember reading the story in D.L. Moody's biography about a woman that made it a point to meet him after one of his meetings and tell him these words: "Moody, when you preached, I heard all of those stories before you told. They were all repeats." To which Moody replied with tears in his eyes, "The people need to hear those stories and I must tell them." And that is exactly what Paul did before the king. He retold his story. By this time, we get something we have never heard before, though, in that story. It is that Paul's memory is jarred the more he tells his conversion story in Acts. And it's like he said, "Oh yeah, I forgot, I left out this part before." Now he doesn't, and it's so important. Let me read it to you. Acts 26, verse 12. "While so engaged as I was journeying to Damascus with the authority and commission of the chief priest, at midday, O king, I saw on the way a light from heaven, brighter than the sun, shining all around me and those who were journeying with me. And when we had fallen to the ground, I heard a voice saying to me in the Hebrew dialect, 'Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It's hard for you to kick against the goads.'" Did you hear it? Because every time he told his story, it always had, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" But this time, he adds the second part after it. "It's hard for you, Saul, to kick against the goads." These are red letter words, meaning Jesus is talking to Saul. That is why we have to take note of this new addition to Paul's story. It is hard to kick against the goads. What does that mean? The risen Christ told Paul that it was hard for him to kick against the spikes or goads. When a young ox was first yoked, it tried to kick its way out of the yoke. If it was yoked to a one-handed plow, the plowman held in his hand a long stick with a sharpened end, which he held close to the ox's heel so that every time it kicked, it was caught by the spike. The sharp end would urge the ox in the right direction. But if it wanted to do its own thing, the small pain of being guided was traded for the big pain of being stabbed in the heel for not listening. It was the pain of disobedience. It seems that Paul was making a very important point. He was saying that God was pricking his conscience, and every time he refused and fought against it, it just got harder for him. Many believe that Paul, witnessing Stephen's stoning in Acts 8, started the pricking of his conscience. He saw Stephen's face look like an angel. He saw Stephen forgive the men who were forgiving him. He saw Stephen commit himself into the arms of Jesus. And to see all this and not turn to Jesus was nothing but kicking against the goads. When God is trying to get our attention and we keep going our own way, we join the goat kicking club. The pain of disobedience is a way more costly than the pain of obeying. Every time God is speaking to us to draw closer to him in obedience, it is our chance to either say yes and guide us to our destination, or say no and Jesus disciplining us to our intended destination, but with some pain. This is really important. With God, he is going to get your intended destination on track. And you could do this basically the easy way or the hard way. What was Paul's destination? Well, that's Acts 26, verses 17 and 18. "I'm sending you to them to open their eyes, to turn them from darkness to light, from the power of Satan to God, so that they may receive forgiveness of sins and place among those who are sanctified by faith in me." God says you chose the sharp goads, but we're still going to get to where I need to bring you. It's nice to get to where God wants us to be, but just without all the pokey, sharp end of a goad. It's so much easier to listen to the voice of God than be stubborn. Thanks for joining the 260 Journey.